So hello everyone and welcome to a live recording of the Passenger Seat podcast. I'm going to do my usual intro so that you get a taste of what the sort of thing we usually do, and then we will get into hopefully talking to a few of you about your experience of the NEC Classic Motorshow. So hello and welcome to the Passenger Seat podcast, a podcast usually recorded from my 1968 Morris Minor Peggy, who is actually parked over in Hall 5 if you haven't been over and had a look at her. And my name is Becca Treston, and as you can see, we are obviously not in Peggy today because we were at the Classic Motor Show, and we've got this fantastic opportunity to use their podcast lounge and have a little bit of a chat with a few of you guys about your experiences of coming to the Classic Motor Show and celebrate their 40-year anniversary. So we've got one fantastic guest lined up who's come all the way from Australia. So Russ, if you want to come and take a seat with myself. So,
thank you.
Russ, you have been a subscriber to the podcast for a little while now, but you have come over to the UK for 5 weeks, including some bits over in Europe. And you've been taking part in loads of fantastic automotive stuff. You were here for the London to Brighton the other week,
yes.
And this is your first time at the NEC.
Yes. First time for both actually. The London to Brighton, that's always been on the bucket list, and of course the timing of it with the NEC being a week later, it just worked perfectly. So we came over to attend both the events. And I've just got to say that so far we've just absolutely thoroughly enjoyed what we've seen. It's been really fantastic. The London to Brighton was just more than I ever imagined. But once again here at the NEC, this is just larger than I could have ever anticipated. So having a fantastic time.
What sort of things have you enjoyed seeing so far?
Look, it's the variety of cars. We've got we have many British cars, of course, in Australia, but nothing to the extent of the variety that I'm seeing here. So we've definitely experienced a lot of models that I haven't seen before, a lot of makes that we haven't seen before, and that in itself is really interesting. Yeah.
What have you got personally back home?
Well, back home we have a bit of a variety of cars. The earliest one is a 1930. It's a Marquette built by Buick in the United States of America. That's been in my family since 1946, and I've recently become the current owner of that one. That's a fully restored vintage car, so really enjoying learning to drive it. It's very different, of course. 3-speed crash gearbox and mechanical brakes. That's a real challenge. But otherwise, yes, we've got an MGB Roadster in the family. I've got a 1959 Morris Minor 2-door saloon, which is undergoing some work on it currently. And there's a Shelby Cobra replica, which was built back in 2000. That's a lot of fun. Get that out on the open road, and a really enjoyable car to drive. But of all things, I actually have which is very unusual in Australia, and I've just came across it through really by default, a Vauxhall Chevette, 1982 Chevette, which my uncle had in his possession. It was a fully imported car, and as far as we know, there's only about 3 in Australia. Quite an unusual vehicle. It's in really good condition, and I know that sometimes they're a much maligned car, the Chevettes, but this one's actually been around Australia 3 times.
Put some miles
put some miles on it, and it's an absolute credit because my uncle not only drove it around Australia but took it off the beaten track and out in the dust and everything else that's pretty horrific for any car. So So for it to have done what it's done and to look as good as it does today, it's a real credit.
Absolutely. And that's a real big mix of vehicles there in terms of eras, in terms of styles. So you are just an automotive lover completely. So an event like this where there's such a vast variety of cars is ideal.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I mean it's about variety. I mean, there's people say, "Oh, what's your favourite car?" And of course, being an Aussie, you're meant to love the old homegrown Holden, which of course I do. But I also I call myself a car person, not a Holden fanatic, and I just love the variety, and that's why I've had such an interest in British cars because. Whilst they're not the prime car of interest in Australia for many, to me, I just love the variety of them that we do have. I did own an XJ6 Jaguar up until recently, but to fit the vintage car in, something had to give, and that's
garage space is limited for us all, unfortunately.
Yes, exactly. So that's had to go, and hopefully to a good home, and it'll be looked after because that was a really wonderful car as well.
Absolutely, and Australia was so important when post-war we were trying to export stuff. That's how so many Morris Minors ended up over there, but not so many of the later ones. So yours is obviously a 59, but the later ones, such as my Peggy, didn't really take off in the same way and get exported.
No, the knockdown kits were only assembled up until 1961. So for anything that's in Australia that's after 1961, it's going to be a privately imported car. So yeah, but certainly up until then, the Morris Minor was a hugely popular car in Australia, and even today, certainly the numbers have dwindled sadly, but there are still very active clubs throughout Australia supporting the miners. I'm with the Morris Minor Car Club of Victoria. We currently have about 173 members, and the regional Victoria also has other clubs. So there's in total 4 clubs throughout Victoria. And then the other states, of course, are the same. They have clubs. So it's still a very strong movement for the Morris Minor.
Yeah. And have you got anything kind of like this that happens in Australia?
Nothing as big. We actually don't even have an entertainment centre that's as large as what this is. So to see the sheer size of this facility is just mind-boggling because we just don't have anything like that.
You've obviously been watching people do YouTube videos and footage and stuff like that that wouldn't have existed in 1984 when this show started. Like, people in Australia might not have even heard that this was happening. You've been watching YouTube videos, and now you've actually been able to come here in person and see it for real.
Yes, exactly, and that's the thing is that I was for years I've been watching social media footage of this particular event, which is why I just thought I've got to get there and have a look at this just to have a visit. And it's we just unfortunately just don't have. Whilst we have classic car events. Absolutely nothing of this magnitude, that's for sure.
Yeah. And what's the biggest kind of car event that you have in Australia?
Sorry, our biggest car event?
Kind of car event you've been to in Australia?
Oh, look, there's really, there's nothing specific. We used to have in Melbourne, we used to have an event, the Motor Classica, it was called. It was quite exclusive. You had to actually get an invite to have your car put on display there, and each year they chose a different theme. So it would be, certain cars, makes of cars, at different shows, just to keep the mix of it going. But unfortunately, whilst that event was planned for this year, they had to pull the pin on and cancel it. It just, for the cost of the insurance to run the event, it was just not going to be viable. Now, having said that, in comparison to the NEC, our event probably only had about 300 cars on display.
Yeah.
So nothing to like the
and incredibly,
the size.
a 300 car event in the UK is possible with kind of one British mark. Like, say for example, Morris Minor Owners Weekends or whatever for the National.
easily 300, 400, 500 of just Morris Minors, and that sort of event would have been multi-mark, and yeah, absolutely. It's interesting what you say about insurance. We had a bit of a chat about insurance and how it's killing a lot of things over in Australia, and I think that's something that events like this and insurance companies here need to be kind of a bit wary of, because to see something as amazing as this struggle after 40 years because of something like insurance would be really terrible.
Yes, no, I totally agree. It really is a shame because it's not only just, you know, the thing about classic cars is it's making other people aware. You know, classic car people all know that there's a classic car industry, and you know we get to see our own vehicles and things, but a lot of it is about other people being able to see that and hopefully encouraging them to become involved and get show that interest in those cars, because we need people to carry over the interest, you know, and unfortunately it's starting to wane a little bit. Certainly in the vintage car and veteran car movement in Australia, there's it's becoming quite difficult for people to get rid of vintage and veteran cars, because there just isn't the market for those cars, and I guess down the track I can see that happening a bit with the classics. Is that unless we get younger,
we're seeing over here as well, and it's something a lot of clubs, especially of those pre-war cars, are having to focus a lot more on, is getting that interest. And this sort of event is exactly what that does, because you walk past the stand that you might not have thought about, but you see the cars, you talk to the owners, and you garner that interest. Absolutely.
Yes, no, that's exactly right, and that's why I think it's such a shame that, you know, that our events are being canned, because it doesn't get those cars out to the general people.
Yeah. Something I love to ask people who come on the podcast is, you've had cars for a while, you've had a variety of cars. What are some of your happiest memories that you've made with cars? Because I think owning a classic car is much more than about owning a car. It's about the memories that you make because you own that car.
Yes, look, I'd have to say that because of my involvement with the Morris Minor Car Club from a very early age, I didn't even have a licence when I had my first Morris Minor. I was 3 years away from that, and but being involved in the Morris Minor Car Club has just been, it's the people and the friends that I've made. I you know, from back in the late 70s when I first joined the club, many of those people that were members then are still good friends today, and that's the thing for me is it's not also just about the cars, but it's about the people that own them and the friendships that I've developed over that time, and I really, you know, value that aspect of it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Becca.
You are free to join the audience once again and enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Great, thank you.
And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your time whilst you're touring around.
Thank you, I'm sure we will. It's as I say, it's just been, this is day 2 of 3, so yep, it's been absolutely fantastic.
Amazing.
And thanks for the opportunity, Becca.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're celebrating 40 years of this amazing event. Somebody come and tell us, why are you here today? Yes, absolutely. Pop that up there. So I'm Becca, and you are...
I'm Charles.
Charles, if you pop the mic a little bit closer.
Charles.
Amazing,
Is that better?
thank
yeah,
you.
Okay, yeah.
And Charles, why are you here today?
Well, this is the first time
Amazing.
I've ever been to the NEC. A good friend of mine is with the Austin A35
Oh wow.
Owners Club.
So they're just across from where I am in the halls.
Yes, and he has 3 A35s, I think, including one of the best vans there is still. It's a winner at his club, which he's very, very proud of. But when I knew he was coming, I live in Spain actually, so I've only just come over, and this happened to be on, so here I am.
Oh, amazing! So, had you heard much about the show previously?
No, and well, obviously I've known about it in the past, but the opportunities never come up to actually come here. But
How have you found it so far?
Oh, wonderful, yes, yeah.
What's your interest in motoring? Have you got cars yourself, or?
Well, yes, like a lot of people, my interest came from the cars that my father owned, you know, and they were always Rovers.
And they've got a big anniversary stand in this year as well.
It's lovely. So I grew up with the pre-war Rover. There's a picture of me being brought back from the hospital when I was born on the bonnet of a P3 Rover.
Oh wow!
And so we always had Rovers, P4s, P5s, P6s, and then the later ones. And
was he about when Rover eventually closed down and fell?
Yes, well, I mean, I worked in the motor trade during that period. So yeah, the interest is not so much in the later models of Rover, but certainly up to the P6, the V8s, you know, the Rover V8s.
But to have had that relationship with the marque throughout the whole of your life, to kind of see such an iconic British marque kind of fade away a little bit.
It's very sad. I've owned 3 Rovers, I think, but I like to restore them. You know, back in the day, you could buy them so cheaply and keep them running for relatively little money. So probably my favourite was the 3500S.
Yeah.
Which I think I bought a 1974 one from the dealership I worked at for £200, you know.
Oh, wow.
And so that was the story there. But I've also had Morris Minors, so I'm not allowed to discuss that with the A35 people.
No, our cars, the Morris Minors are a little bit easier to work on because, you know, the engine bay is a little bit bigger and all of those things that,
The problems are similar, though. The corrosion is the issue, really, to start with, isn't it? And then, but mechanically, it's lovely to see all the people, you know, looking after them. Lots of parts here.
Yeah.
And just the feeling that you can probably get anything that you want, you know. So that's lovely, isn't it?
So, what's the classic car scene like over in Spain?
Not very good.
Okay.
There are enthusiasts, mainly, I think, expats. You see quite a lot of British cars, but there is a scrapyard I know, because my son also lives in Spain, where I found an Austin Westminster, an A95 Austin Westminster, just sitting under the trees, you know. And it had been there for 30 years because my son's wife remembers playing in it when she was a child, you know.
Wow.
And I did try and get it off the guy, but he's one of those who's not going to sell anything.
No, and it's we'll get round to it eventually.
And I pass it every year or so, and it's getting sadder and sadder, sadly. But there we go. You know, there isn't the same interest really.
Yeah. What sort of things have you really enjoyed seeing here today?
Well, the Rovers, the Auto Jumble was very interesting, but just everybody really. Lancia was another thing. I worked for a Lancia dealer, so I had a good chat to them, and that brought back a lot of memories, you know. And it's been lovely.
Oh, good. And what are you still hoping to see?
Well, I don't think I've covered more than about 20%. So,
it's massive, isn't it?
Yeah,
you need all 3 days.
Yeah, I'm just going to. I'm going back to Spain this evening, so I'm only here till 4 o'clock. So I guess I better carry on. I was just having a breather in your seating space.
And quickly, so you've got classics now yourself. Still some Rovers and stuff, or
not anymore. Not here. I still enjoy driving an older car. I got a 30-year-old Golf in Spain because they last there. You know, you don't have
corrosion and salt and all of that.
Sun issues from being so hot, but so I keep my hand in with working on that and keeping it going. There's very good part setup for those here, so I can,
Yeah.
whenever I'm over, if I need anything, I know I can get it.
Yeah. So what are some of your best memories that you've made around cars? Because obviously you've worked in the motor trade, had those old Rovers.
Well, in the 80s, yes, I was fortunate enough probably to have driven everything
Yeah.
that was out there, you know, and not so much the Ferraris and the Porsches, but because it was a quality used car dealer,
Yeah.
everything else, Range Rovers, Jaguars, right down to, it was lovely to see Marinas and Allegros again, you
Yeah.
know, because they're much laughed at these days, but people used to buy them, you know,
Yeah.
they were very popular, and at the time I don't think we thought they were that bad.
No.
No, it was
No.
just as the end of British Leyland came along, you know, then
They were
people
an
tend
easy
to say, well,
target.
that was the reason, that was the reason, that was the reason. Yes.
Yeah. So what if you had the opportunity to drive so many good things? What was a standout drive for you?
Well, I would like to drive a Rover P5B, you know, like Mrs.
Yes.
Thatcher used to have.
Yes.
Because my father had one of those, and I found it for him actually when I was working in the trade, and he already had one.
Yeah.
But this was a midnight blue, and it was beautiful, and I knew as soon as I showed it to him, you know,
Yeah.
I don't really want another one. But
Yeah.
he did. So yes, yeah, but no, I used to drive all sorts of things. So remembering the Lancias from the time, again, not a fashionable, the Lancia Beaters especially, but they were a superb car, driver's car in their day. Yeah.
And again, as something that has now kind of started growing in popularity and interest in terms of Lancias are now cars that people are starting to get interested in.
I think as they die out and begin to
Yeah.
be really threatening, the numbers of beta saloons is probably very low,
Yeah.
and you'd have to be quite an enthusiast, I think, to take one on, from what I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah, but,
Well, thank you very much,
Yeah.
and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
I'm
and
sure I
I really
will.
appreciate you coming and having a chat.
that's
It's
all
so
right,
nice
see,
to hear.
it's easy.
Because we're all walking around this show, and
Yeah.
we've all got stories from owning cars and living with cars
Well,
and
that's what it
enjoying
is,
cars.
isn't it? Yes.
And capturing some of those today, I think, is really fantastic, because
Mm.
we're all walking around and we might not speak to people so much, and hearing these stories, I think, is really fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, lovely to talk
Thank
to
you very much,
Okay.
Charles. Have we got one more volunteer who'd be willing to come and have a quick chat with me about their experiences of coming to the NEC? So, I've been saved by Russ's wife. Introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Susan.
Susan, and you've also come off from Australia, and you are the one that owns the MGB Roadster within the family.
Yes, that's right. It's a 1969 MG Mark II, and I've had it for 30 years.
Yeah.
Bought it after having a Holden Kingswood, which was my first very large car, and I saw that my sister-in-law, Lisa, who is to become my sister-in-law, she had a lovely MGB, and after I travelled overseas for about 6 weeks, I thought, I'd like to have an MGB too.
Yeah.
So my family actually had MGs, so I grew up with my father having an MGTC, and he raced cars and motorbikes,
Yeah.
and my mother also raced a couple of cars that they had. She's won quarter mile sprints at Geelong, which is an event that takes place each year.
Yeah.
So we've had a fair bit of influence through the family, and actually it was Russ who was up here before, who worked on the car and restored it more recently.
Yeah.
And I love to drive it still.
Yeah. And so, what was it about the sister-in-law's MGB that appealed to you?
I think they're such a cute car. The
Yeah.
MG just always looks just so cute, and the MGB in particular.
Yeah.
Always fun to drive. I enjoyed going. I think I had the opportunity to be a passenger a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was it was quite expensive actually to buy. I needed to take out a loan
Yeah.
to get the car, and
gosh.
yeah, that's right. It just really appealed. I think the look of it, and then the opportunity to drive it was great.
Yeah. And what have you thought about coming over and being part of the NEC this weekend?
It's been really good, really enjoyable. thought I would come for one day, perhaps. I wasn't quite sure 3 days was, I would manage 3 days at the car show, but I've actually really enjoyed it, and back here for a second day, so much to see. Particularly I've enjoyed seeing the Morris Miners, and I particularly enjoyed seeing the women's driving group. That's been really great. It's we have a number of certainly ladies that drive classic cars, not so much veteran cars, but I don't think, perhaps don't quote me on that, but it's really good to see this sort of movement. So that's been fantastic to see here.
And have you got anything kind of like that in Australia?
In terms of the women's sort of movement? Look, I'm not absolutely sure. I know that there is an event next year, which I'm hoping to participate in, which does commemorate a female driver in the past, and that's sort of a bit of a run over 3 days.
Oh,
so the Florence Thompson. So I'm hoping to be able to go in that. And certainly, you can always participate in any of the MG runs. The Morris Minor runs that we do go in do have a number of lady drivers in those. So there's definitely those ones. But I'm not quite sure if there is a women's driving club.
And would you come to this sort of thing again?
Yes, I would. And we've also been to the Beerley Motor Museum, which was really interesting, and we're hoping to get to the British Motor Museum on Monday. All these events have been really wonderful, and the London to Brighton was fantastic.
And that was obviously commemorating the Ladies Automobile Club, so lots of women drivers were taking part in that.
No, you're right. There were so many women drivers, which was fantastic. They're not easy cars for anyone, male or female, to drive, so really good to see that.
Yeah, fantastic. And what's some of your best memories from being around cars and having cars?
I think probably early days driving in the MG. Sometimes in really cold weather and the rain kind of coming through, and trying to block a few leakages as we were driving. Hot weather and being able to have the roof off the MG driving, that was great. I'm not sure the sun was quite so strong as it is these days when this was in the 90s. So that was really great, and just taking friends. It was my everyday car. And what I enjoyed was I used it to go to and from work into the central business district, but you felt like your work day ended as soon as you got in the car.
I totally agree.
It was all about the journey.
Whenever I was commuting in the car, it was like this little safe space where I wasn't caught up in the fact that I was in traffic or whatever. I was just having a nice time doing what I loved, because I love driving my car.
Yes, absolutely. And I still feel the same way these days. When I get into the MG, it's all about the experience, and it's such fun to drive, and you feel proud and to own it and to use it.
Yeah, fantastic. And what are you looking forward to trying to do with the car in the future? Have you got any events you're looking forward to? Or?
Well, hopefully we'll get the opportunity to do the event next year, and just to continue to use it more. I'd also like my daughters to learn how to drive a manual. Learning to drive a manual is not very common in Australia now, or certainly in Melbourne. And so they haven't had the opportunity to drive a manual. Actually, my older daughter has driven it. We were somewhat nervously heading around fairly congested streets, so I'd like to get an open area to, they're both great drivers, both my daughters, but the chance to learn a manual would be, I think, the next step, so that they hopefully, would be able to take the car on in the future.
And we talk a lot over here about the difficulties of getting insurance for younger people on classics, but you were saying that actually it's quite difficult to even get your young people insured on your cars for any of the cars.
It can be very expensive. I think all families sort of face, how do they manage getting the insurance once their children are sort of 18 and have their full licence. And then I don't know the ins and outs of it, to be honest, but I know it's certainly a challenge for every family, and it's just, I think it's just generally harder for young people these days. They do find the cost of living tough, and that's, registrations are expensive as well to have a car, and yet you do pretty much need one unless you're really living close to the central area.
Australia is so vast. If you want to be able to get around, it's something that you need.
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you very much for coming up.
Pleasure.
I hope you have a fantastic rest of the weekend, the pair of you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
It's been great for you to come along and be part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone would like to come and speak about their experiences of coming to the NEC, talking about their time in classic motoring, please, by all means, hop up and come and take part. Hello, Mike. Thank you for coming along. And is this just your first NEC, or you've been coming to them for a year?
No, I've been coming to the NEC since I was about this height. My dad is just over there. He is an MG man. MGC is the kind of family classic.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been coming since I was, I want to say maybe 7 was probably the first time I came here. Missed a few years, but I'd say we've probably been 10 years on the trot now.
Yeah.
This is just the best classic car show in my opinion.
Yeah, because it's so vast and there's so much to see.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you here for the whole weekend?
Today and tomorrow I've got a car on the MG stand, the youngster stand just up there.
So you've gone into the fold, you've bought the family vehicles.
Yeah, it's the first time I've had a personal car. We've had some drive tribe cars here before in the past. But yeah, this is the first time I've had one of my own cars, little MG.
Yeah.
I've inherited the MG gene from my dad. So,
Yes.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Tell us about your MG, how long have you had it?
Only since February, to be honest. It was one of those where one of the guys in the MG club had it, and I said to him, if you ever sell that car, please get in touch. And then a couple of years later, I think he was buying a house, and he thought, right, and Mike wants that car, so I swooped in and got it.
You can't be a proper car fan if you're selling your car to buy a house.
He has got, I think, about 12.
Okay. Yeah, we'll let him off.
But it's a very cool one. It's a white MG ZS 180, which is quite a rare car, and I've always wanted one. So that popped up, and I said, right, yeah, you ever want to sell it? I'm your man.
So having your car here for the first time must be pretty special if you've been coming for so many years.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It's funny watching people interact with your car in the way that you interact with everyone else's cars.
Yeah.
Just looking around it, peeking inside, all that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a pretty cool moment. I'll take lots of pictures.
Yeah, have you had any really interesting conversations with people about your car?
To be fair, I've not really hung about it yet. And we're kind of looking around the show. We have a bit of a strategy every year for getting around all the stands. Once we've done that, I'll go hang out and chat to folk.
A strategy is definitely what's needed to be able to get around it all, because it feels bigger this year. I know that there's a record number of car clubs here, so
it's very cool. Yeah, there's always stuff that comes every year, but yeah, there's also plenty of new things this year. Our strategy is we do the perimeter, the entire perimeter, and then we zigzag through all the aisles. That covers all pretty much everything.
If you've got lots of things to get round.
Yeah.
And do you usually do the 3 days, or is it usually a one-day thing for you when you come along?
It's usually Saturday, Sunday,
Yeah.
full Saturday, and then half Sunday to get back up to Scotland was the usual thing.
But you'll be trapped until they let the cars out at 6 o'clock tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. All the horns will blare, and then we get in there. But no, again, being part of that kind of ceremonial side of it as well, it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, really excited. And what's your favourite thing about the NEC? What makes you keep coming back?
It's a weird one. Like, there's big shows like Goodwood and things in the summer where they're all very dynamic and you could say they're more exciting. But there's something about the classic car community, and you know, if you're interested in cars, the chance, or you're interested in a specific car, you might think you're one of only a few people, but then you come to the show and you realise that there's actually lots of people that are into the same stuff as you.
Yeah.
So you can have some really genuine conversations about the engine in your specific MG with plenty of people. You know, it's not just one guy. Like, it's just really cool knowing that you share a passion with this many people. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands come to these things, but yeah, it's crazy.
I can imagine, yeah. And there's also, you can go to your regular car shows throughout the summer and you might see kind of your Morris Minors, your MGs, your whatever. But this, I think it's because it's inside and it protects the cars a little bit, some more unusual stuff comes out and you get to see it. We've got a friend who is obsessed with the Meadow Friskies, and every year he beelines for them just to check that they're still about, just to check that it's see one in person and everything. And seeing those unusual cars, I think, is another pull of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some really, like, you can come here every year and there may be a car that you have never seen before. You can be the biggest classic car nut and there'll be one thing I've never seen one of them. What even is that?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just really, really cool.
What's one of your best memories from coming to the NEC?
To be honest, the one that sticks out is I was probably 14 and the Sporting Bears had just started up.
Oh, yes.
And I got what I would call my sort of first supercar experience. So I guess it's not really classic cars, but there was an Audi R8 that was new at that time. And I'd seen it on Top Gear and I was like, I have to, you know, paid a tenner and you get a quick 15-minute round the block ride. And it was one of those moments where I couldn't believe a car could be that quick. You know, you're used to your family cars and stuff and you're like, wow, this is a car can do this. This is amazing. So I would say that was a kind of seminal moment. Really, that was really cool.
The Sporting Bears, having been kind of part of the show for so long, it's a real kind of key part. And it's firstly, it's finding time because there's so much to see in the halls to go and be part of that. But they do a fantastic job of raising money for charity. And something I like is the fact that they're here at the Resto show as well.
Yes.
So if that's a smaller show, so you've got maybe more chance of being able to, because that's the time that I got to do the Sporting Bears was the Resto show. And yeah, it's fantastic. But also, if you're in Hall 5, hearing them all roar off and then come back in at the end of it is brilliant.
Yeah, it's really great. And the selection they have, everything from some quite mundane classics for that nostalgia, but all the way up to like brand new supercars. So yeah, if you're, especially for a kid, if you've never experienced a fast car before, that's an amazing way to do it. It's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting people in the cars, either whilst they're sat on the stands, because they're doing the family-friendly thing this year, and getting them to kind of smell it and experience it, that's one way to get them in. But then, actually go over to Sporting Bears, go drive a car for a bit, as well sit in a car that's being driven for a bit. That's really going to get you hooked.
And it's made me want to, in future, if I have a car that's cool enough, like contribute towards that. Because it must be a really rewarding experience to have, you know, kids or other people just like enjoy a car that they would never get the chance to in a normal life. Like I remember when the guy took me out in the R8, he absolutely spanked it. Like he went for it, and I would, you know, the smile on my face. Like I imagine it's an incredibly rewarding thing to give to someone else.
Amazing. And so you've been around cars a very long time, all your life, much like myself. What's one of your best memories of being around cars?
That's a tough one. It'll be something with my dad. It'll probably be we went to MG Live. It wasn't called that back in the day, but like the big Silverstone show that MG does. We went down there. I must have been 5 or 6, and it's a kind of a weird memory. We sat and had a burger at a picnic table, and we took a picture. And I've got my Ferrari hat on, my dinosaur T-shirt, and then about, what will it have been? 20 years on, the same picnic table is sitting there at Silverstone, and put the cap on, and we got the exact same picture. So it just kind of shows that, classic cars have literally been from this height up to full adult. And you know, I still absolutely love. I will never stop coming to the NEC. It's
and sharing
really
that
cool.
with family members is incredibly special.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, my dad's got like a pretty cool car collection now, so it's not just MGs now. There's other stuff, and that just expands to the other shows you can go to, with you know, plenty of Jags and stuff now. So I love coming to events, and I'm never going to stop.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for volunteering yourself and having a chat. And that brings us pretty nicely towards the end of the slot. I would like to thank you all very much for listening. And when you leave here, drive safely and happy motoring.